Hello and welcome back to the Pirate Players Then and Now podcast. I am your Hampton football enthusiast, TJ Jones, with another great guest from Hampton history. As we have with us Mr. William Parrish, better known as Bill, and a member of the 1985 CIAA championship football team, and certainly doing a lot of great things after that. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, TJ. Good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
And no problem. Any chance I get to highlight a Hamptonian doing great things in the world is a pleasure for me. So
Yes.
thank you for this. And I wanted to start off with how'd you get to Hampton in the first place?
Yes. So, great story, origin story, right? I'm so glad I got to Hampton because it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. But I was a senior in high school. I'm from East Orange, New Jersey. And I had the good fortune of having a couple of coaches who had gone to HBCUs,
Hmm.
pledge of fraternity, and they were impactful to me. I also had a good friend who had two older brothers, and both of them were at A&T at the time. And he made the mistake, I guess, of bringing their yearbooks to school, and I just fell in love with those images, seeing, Black folks in school, on a college campus, like, doing everything. And it really, really fascinated me. So much so that I knew that when I started to apply for schools, I was going to an HBCU. I had family in Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina. So my choices were Morgan State, Hampton, and North Carolina A&T. The problem was I went to high school day at Hampton, and no one else ever saw the light of day after that. To be quite honest, I actually turned down a scholarship to go to Morgan State for aerospace engineering.
All right.
And I never even made the visit. I went to Hampton on high school day. Now, it was late back then, right? I mean, you're talking kids are being accepted now, sometimes junior year, beginning of senior year. This was April of my senior year
Wow.
in high school. And I had a chance to go to a bunch of other colleges. I knew I was going to leave New Jersey. But when I took this trip and landed on Hampton's sunny campus, 80-degree weather in April, I knew I was gonna be there, and I didn't wanna see anything or hear anything else. It was just perfect, It was far enough down south where you felt like you were down south. It was a college campus, unlike some schools that are built right in the middle of a city, and, oh my god, one of the things they used to talk about is the ratio of women to men,
Hmm.
and I have to say it was a recruiting tool. Uh, it's rumored that it was as high as 26 to 1. That sounds impossible, but that didn't hurt at all. And I don't know what it is about, we had a couple of sessions in Ogden Hall. And you know how the side doors of Ogden Hall open?
Hmm.
So like I'm trying to pay attention and I see all of this community outside the doors. Like I said, 80 degrees, sunny, it's great weather, and everybody looks fantastic,
Mm.
And I just fell in love with it. I didn't want to see or do anything else after that.
Well, I want to be clear. I just, and I completely agree. There is a spot where if you show up, you understand that there's nothing else to see.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it sounded like you were there and were strong academically. So that was the driving force of your selection process, not necessarily football.
Yeah, I had good grades. As a matter of fact, I was recruited by Brown University, and that was the furthest thing from my mind. And growing up in all black school district, I think East Orange at the time was 88% black, and we had white guidance counselors in some cases. And I think for them, it's a feather in their cap to have a student who goes to what they consider to be a great school. And I'll never forget my guidance counselor, a white woman, who told me I was wasting myself by going to Hampton University. She was ignorant to what the school could do for me and what the school could do for so many students like me. And it was a tragedy. And I tell kids this today when I talk to them. I'm out in the schools talking about HBCUs and recruiting a lot. And I always say it's your duty to come equipped with some knowledge when you get the guidance. Because for the kids who have no idea, they will be led any way, maybe not the way they want to be led. But you have to have some foundation. I'm thankful that I did, and I was able to resist. Her telling me, "What is that going to look like on your resume? You're wasting yourself if you choose Hampton over Brown." And some days I wish that I could see her. She's passed away several years ago. But I will never forget that experience. And she was so wrong because Hampton did so much for me. And I know it gave me the confidence. I could run circles around anyone who graduated from any of those other schools that perhaps she thought would have been a better fit. So I do tell students that it's your responsibility and obligation to come in that guidance suite with some foundation. And I'm glad I had it.
Yeah, I can only echo your sentiment. Even I'm approximately 8 or 9 years after you, and I had the same exact experience. A guidance counselor
Really?
who basically said to me, why are you going there? There are so many other options that would be more appropriate for your skill set, and
Hmm.
technical language like that when they're saying to say something without saying it.
Yes.
So I can definitely echo that sentiment. However, that conversation didn't go too far with me only because I was third generation, so I had to
Yeah.
shut that down real fast.
You had a foundation. You had the wherewithal to push back, and so many students don't.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that you were able to do so. So you arrive on campus, and then you ultimately, I'm assuming, did you play, or
Yeah.
how did that all come
Yeah.
together?
So part of my decisioning in high school, I played football in high school. Interestingly enough, we won a championship in our conference. We were referred to as the Mighty 29. We had 29 people on the varsity football team.
Mm,
We all played both ways. I was a guard, all state, and a linebacker slash defensive tackle, 4 years. And everybody played. The only time I came out of the game was kickoff. I was on the kickoff return team, punt return team, extra point team, first offense and first defense. So at some point, I thought I was going to play on TV on Saturdays, and I had all of the big schools, the big TV schools, on my list. And of course, my mom, who was very instrumental, always told me, you can't go to school for football.
mm.
And I'm thinking, well, how else am I going to get to the pros? And she said, you have to have something else to fall back on, and school has to be it. And it's funny, she talked to one of her friends at work, and she said he wanted to go to Penn State. And they said, Penn State, that's a football factory. And they said it like a derogatory. I was like, yeah, that's where I want to go. They make great linebackers, and that's what I wanted to do. But I quickly set my sights when I realized that I wasn't going to play Big Ten football or anything like that. But I knew I wasn't going to play Division III. And at the time in 1985, I think it was Division II.
Yeah, Division two, 85. Hmm.
Yeah. So I said, I know where I want to go. I want to be in an HBCU, and I know I can play. I did not get recruited, and I walked on in 1985. I was a walk on, and it was a great experience. I always tell students making that transition from high school to college requires some transition. And the fact that I was on the football team really, really helped my
Mm.
transition. I arrived on campus around August 10th. You know how hot it is in Hampton,
Mm-hmm.
Virginia in
In August.
August.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, we still had two-a-days, right? I mean, all this stuff about, workouts, extreme and all of that, and teams cutting back. We still had two-a-day practices and then came back for film study and weightlifting in the evening. And I remember the only people on campus, football team, the cafeteria staff, buildings and grounds, and the band. And they spent almost as much time on that field as we did. They were
Mm.
working really hard too. I give them that. But it was a great experience, never having been down south, smelling that what is that? That bay smell that comes off the bay, that crab bay smell early in the
Yep.
mornings in the heat. And, it was a great experience. So you just taking me back just thinking about it now, and I'm so glad I had the opportunity.
Well, ultimately, as a walk-on, that's hard to do and to stick with it, right? There's the incentives are not as obvious as they are when you're getting some type of compensation for
Right.
participation. So you have
It
to
was
want
very
it.
tough. It was very tough, and I sum it up, the students, the athletes they recruited, they got 10 times to do it right once, and I got 1 time to do it right. Once, 1 time, and it was hard. You're always at the back of the line, you're always at the bottom of the pole, and it was tough, and I had the good fortune of playing behind a guy who got drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, Isaac Reedon, who was a nose
Mm.
guard who has since passed, but he was a pro, and I was scout team working him out and, holding that bag and, taking those forearm shivers to my chin and my chest. So I learned quickly, but it was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it at all.
What year did you arrive?
I came in the fall of 1985.
All right. So that was the championship year. So yeah, how was that experience? That was quite a run. You guys, congratulations on just getting last year, getting added to the Athletics Hall of Fame at the
Yeah.
university
You know,
for that.
it was a great experience, and when I got to school, I didn't realize that, I was All-State in New Jersey, and when you get to school, you realize that everybody there was All-State,
Mm.
right? And they are older than you. So, me thinking I was playing linebacker, I was undersized for linebacker at the time. I think the starting linebacker was like 6'5", 6, uh, from New Jersey, a brother named Trevor Strickler, good friend of mine. And I just remember not having any there's no JV team, there's no freshman team, right? So you gotta get in where you fit in, and it was tough, and I remember, our first game was against Cheney, and being from New Jersey, it was a road trip, and I'm thinking, "Okay, I'm gonna have my parents come down to Pennsylvania and, watch me in the game," because I was confident that, even if I didn't get a starting role, I could easily play special teams. I mean, special teams, a little bit of technique, but a lot of hustle and a
Hmm.
lot of heart, and probably Thursday before the game, no one said anything about anything, and I'm like, "Okay," the first thing I recognize is the people who were playing special teams were the sophomores and juniors and seniors who weren't playing on first team offense and defense.
Mm.
We never even practiced special teams, right? Because they had all played the year before. I think maybe there was a walkthrough on Friday before the travel time. But I never even got a chance to, quote, unquote, "make that team." And then it was funny, I remember going to the equipment manager, and I said, "Well, when do we figure out, like, the room assignments on the road?" And he said, "Oh, there's a list, you know, you gotta see if you made the traveling squad. There's a list to be posted on the door." And I go down to the door, and I don't see my name on the list.
Mm.
Now, the worst thing about this is freshman year, everybody knows you play football, you're on the football team. And then Saturday rolls around and you're right there with them. And they're saying, wait a minute, I thought you guys had a game against Cheney. You're supposed to be in Pennsylvania. I didn't make the traveling squad. So even a recognition that there was a traveling squad where only the first and second team traveled was new for me. So I didn't get a lot of run, but I made my contribution to that championship team. And actually the only travel squad I made was when we played Norfolk State, which is probably 20 minutes. Maybe 25 if you got tunnel traffic,
Right,
but I
right
did
down the
make it.
road, and everybody can go.
Yeah, so it was good.
Well, I mean, but those lessons are very valuable, right? Ultimately, as you come to understand your role
Yeah.
and where you fit in, and certainly that was early on. Um, so as your experience progressed through the balance of your time on the team, I'm sure that that all changed as you were there longer and had more of an opportunity to establish yourself.
Yeah, it actually changed in a very different way in that after my freshman year, I didn't play.
Hmm.
I was an architecture major my freshman year, and architecture is a very demanding major at Hampton. It's a 5-year program, very demanding, and you're often in the lab, Bemis, all hours of the night.
Mhm.
And with the football commitment that we had in terms of film study, weightlifting, etc., after practice, it was really difficult for me to do both. So another realization was you play spring ball in the spring,
Mm.
right? You don't have any of that in high school. So March comes around and it's time to play spring football. This is March of 86. And that's where you get evaluated, right? Are you going to get money? Thought it was an opportunity to get that scholarship money.
Mhm.
And as a walk on, that's really what you're playing your heart out for. One of the things. And at the end of spring football, which is about 30, 35 days, I had my conference with the coaches and they're like, we don't have any money to give you.
Hmm.
I was not unique in that scenario. Quite a few people did not get money. You could stay on the team if you like, but we don't have any aid, no partial, no nothing. Okay. So I made a decision that I thought like this is a full-time job playing
Mm.
football on the college level, right? Practice 5 days, 6 days, you play a game. On the seventh day, we had a 12-minute run and we had meetings every Sunday. It was a full-time job. And I said, for me to spend time on this full-time job and not get any benefit that I can see tangibly, no playing time, I'm not certain I want to continue to do that. And I had to make a really, really tough decision that I would no longer be on the team. And, I don't look back and say, what if I had made a different decision? I do have my line brother, Floyd Pettaway, stayed on the team and he got playing time, which typically happens as you get older. You're upperclassman, sophomore, junior, senior. Now, don't get me wrong, there were freshmen who played, and there were freshman walk-ons who played, right? If you're in the right position, the right opportunity, and the right skill set, it can happen for you. But for me, I made a decision that if I'm not playing and I'm not on scholarship, then I'm not going to interrupt academics. I need to focus on that. And that's what I did.
And that is a great experience, right? Understanding what it would take and that you had not particularly come just for that. So it was time to follow up on the things you actually came to the university to pursue. And the system has changed a lot, but even now, if you look at today's roster, there's a fair number of walk-ons on the team right now.
Yeah, yeah, I had a nephew who's a senior, walked on. So I know it still happens, and it's not unusual for it to happen at big programs and small programs throughout the country.
But that's a special type of commitment, I would say, to the experience, and they're necessary. You gave a great example of kind of what your contribution was, even to making sure that the scout programs and all the other pieces ran properly, which is
Yeah,
a necessary component that people don't talk about.
and I got the jacket. I got the championship jacket and the championship ring, and I celebrate wholeheartedly with the team every chance I get, including our Hall of Fame induction, because I was part of that team.
Absolutely.
No stats, no accolades, but I was part of that team, and it was a great experience, and I won't forget it.
And nor should you. So talk about the rest of your Hampton campus experience, because obviously you had a lot more work to do. And we used to say that folks that were architecture majors, you saw them at freshman orientation and never again until graduation, because they were living in Bemis.
Yeah, yeah. So fortunately for me, I actually found a major that was related, that was more my style. I love the history of architecture classes. We had to take art, which I loved, but there were a lot of technical drawing components. And not having had any mechanical drawing classes in high school, I just thought architecture was you're creative, you have
Hmm.
ideas, and you can apply them to real estate, building, commercial properties, etc. And I didn't realize how technical the drawing process was. We used to have a what we call architecture studio, one class where we sat at a table and draw, and we would draw with a T-square. And this was before the rise of computer-aided design, CAD, from 9 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that was a tough class to sit there 3 hours
Hmm.
drawing. And sometimes we drew lines for 3 hours and would get evaluated on the thickness of your line. We were using these lead pencils where you insert the lead. And, the instructor, the professor would come and see that your lines were not the same dimension or they were too thick for a title block. So it was very rudimentary, very rote tasks. And fortunately for me, in the same department was a major that had would just started a couple years prior called Building Construction Technology.
Mm.
And that was more my speed. I still had architecture classes, but now I had economics and finance and business law and marketing. And I also had carpentry, HVAC, and calculus structures, right? So we went through everything from calculating the strength of soil to put up buildings. Those were our
Mm.
structures class, which is calculus based. To I had a carpentry lab where we built the house in Armstrong Slater, framing doors and windows and trusses and roof trusses and floor trusses and wall panels. We physically did that. So it was a great combination of building science and business, and I really liked the business part. But I would always say you could tell, even though we were in the department, when you're in architecture class, you could tell the BCT majors. They stick out a little bit. Not exactly as precise. I used to hate building models. Part of architecture is you have to build models, right? You got this building and you got to be able to develop a three-dimensional scale model of it, which requires time, is tedious. You're cutting these little pieces of mat board and you're gluing together. My thumbs would just be stuck together all the time, man. And it's glue like on all the pieces going around the building. You could see the glue and the finger marks and you could always tell. But it was a great foundation and I got through it. But after my freshman year, I switched to building construction technology major. And that was a great switch for me. So I was able to excel. Campus life is campus life. At a black school is nothing greater. My second semester of my sophomore year, I pledged fraternity, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Gamma Epsilon chapter. I had the good fortune of seeing brothers come before me, Spring '86, who were on the football team with me when I played.
Mm.
Kevin Bettis and Thomas Gosia. And I mentioned that my line brother in spring '87, Floyd Pettaway, also played football. And man, what could be better? I always like to point, people have things they know the cues for, but I like to let people know that we had the highest GPA on the yard when we were there. And I think we had the most fun too. But the scholarship is important to us. So yeah, but
I will say that my father was Gamma Epsilon 63. His attitude was the same. He was like, he used to say the same thing. We had the highest GPA on the campus when we were there.
yeah.
So,
It's true, man, and you have to live up to that, and, one of the things that I had to get adjusted to Hampton on was being from New Jersey, things move a lot differently, a lot faster, and, I'm not sure the word I wanna use, but people are very closed in a sense. In New
mm,
Jersey, New York, right? Nobody has
mhm,
time for anything. In Hampton, everybody speaks to you.
mhm.
Right? They say hello, and that was a you would think something that small wouldn't be a big deal, but that was a big adjustment. In New York, New Jersey, if you speak to someone you don't know, the next question is, "You know me?" Like it's a contest, like it's about to be a battle. And Hampton was very different. It was slower. We
Mhm.
thought it was so slow, but it was necessary. I did not want to go to school in the city. I wanted to be on a campus. And what can you say about that campus, that beautiful campus surrounded
Mm.
by water? Um, that
Well,
has its own stories.
one of the things I've thought about more recently and heard is that, yes, Hampton is slower, but it does allow you time to now think, right? And to develop your creative side and some of these other things that maybe moving so quickly you don't have time to develop. Part of the value in being in that space.
Absolutely. And I mean, we made our own fun, you know. You have no choice. You get very creative. And that was it was just fantastic.
So so you get to the end of the time, graduate at some point in here, and then w- what do you go on to do? What happens after graduation?
Yeah. So I've just been, it's God, right? In
Right.
terms of putting me in places and laying hands on my direction. I'm equipped with this new degree and I'm ready to go back home to work in the New York market. construction management. And I never forget, the mark was I want to make 30 G's,
Mm.
get out of school. That's the target, This was 1989. I want to make 30 G's. And I sent out so many resumes. One of them went to a minority owned construction management firm in New York named Santa Fe Construction.
Mm.
And wouldn't you know, one of the executives in that program in New York was the founder of the building construction technology curriculum at Hampton University.
Wow.
Like, how could you
Wow.
how could you figure that? So seeing my resume, seeing that I came from the program he created, got me in the door. And that was my first job in New York. And I didn't make 30 G's. The first offer I think was 27.5.
Hmm.
But that's still 1990 money. Yeah. No responsibilities. Yeah. Working in New York, feeling good about myself. And having the opportunity to work for a minority-owned construction management firm once again was God keeping me on this path because now I've been operating a minority-owned construction management firm for over 22 years as an entrepreneur. And it started from me seeing what it was. They say you got to see it to be it.
Mm.
And I just had the good fortune of coming out to go to work for a black man who was running projects in New York side by side with larger construction management firms, predominantly white firms. And it taught me how this joint venturing, how this tandem partnering goes. And I always say that, we did the same work. My first job out of school was building the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in Harlem.
Mm. Mm.
1990, $30
Wow.
million project
An important project.
and very important to the culture and to the city. And we had a joint venture with a bigger, predominantly white firm. But, it's not like they gave us the little drawings. They didn't give us the small things. We were all doing the same work.
Mm.
So it gave me the confidence. Once again, it reinforced my confidence that you can compete with them. You can do the same thing. Of course, you need to build a network and have resources and be able to strike out on your own with relationships once you get the technical side. And that's what I said early on, working for Desmond Emmanuel was his name. I said, man, one day, I don't know, maybe it's 20 years from now, I want to be able to have my own firm, minority-owned construction management firm, and be able to do this work and provide for families and impact the city and grow my community. And that's exactly what happened. So I just really had the favor of God, I believe, all the way through.
Well, if you came out the gate working on the Schomburg,
Yeah.
then where do you go from there? Once you can do that, what can't you do?
And I mean, when you quote unquote reassimilate into the world, coming
Mm.
out of a black school, I get to work in Harlem every day. I'm on 135th and Lenox every day. I was not experiencing any downside at all, professionally, intellectually, culturally, nothing.
Well, doing that was not enough, apparently. So you have this wonderful project you've been working on that I've been watching,
Mhm.
which is called Homecoming Ready, right?
Mhm.
And tell us how that came about. And
Yeah, so Homecoming Ready was initiated out of my entrepreneurship. There was no entrepreneurship major at Hampton in 1985. But I learned entrepreneurship at Hampton in 1985. I sold T-shirts on campus. I threw parties. I worked with other brothers, some of my fraternity brothers who had enterprises that they allowed me to carry on as they graduated. And it taught me about marketing and people skills and sales and product and inventory and marketing and promotions and advertising, all of that stuff. So I was this entrepreneurship vessel.
mm,
And I also remember from high school, the hallmark, they always said, do well in school so you can get a good job. No one ever said you can create your own industry, you can create your own business, you can pilot your own business. They never said that.
mm,
I didn't get introduced to entrepreneurship till I got to Hampton. And that's really where it started. So I mentioned I sold free South Africa posters, I sold Benetton bags, T-shirts, $5 T-shirts, and it taught me systems, you know? Here I am earning maybe $3 a shirt on a $5 shirt working for someone else.
Mm.
And it came to me that, well, I've been out here for 2 hours. Now that everybody has left the block, all these young ladies in the dorms that I can't get in there can sell T-shirts. And I started building my system and leverage, increasing my leverage and velocity, utilizing friends, sometimes little sisters, who wanted to earn some extra money and have some extra time that would sell T-shirts in their dorm. And what's better than sitting there waiting for people to bring you money? And I was learning and experimenting with that leverage system early on at Hampton. So I was able to. I also started a clothing line called Billy Brown NYC. It's still up. It's you can go to the website Billy Brown
Mm.
NYC, and it was around the time Carl Kanai, if you remember Cross Colors back in 93, 94,
Yep.
when those clothing lines were really big. I call it the golden age of hip hop where there was so many black entrepreneurs, young companies started, young record labels, promotions companies, clothing companies. And I started that venture and that taught me a lot more about business. And I ran that from 94 to about 99 with major success. You know, one of our high marks is back then you could be watching a popular TV show and you see all of these urban clothing lines on the TV show. So New York Undercover, if you remember New York Undercover was a very
Absolutely.
popular
Mhm.
show and we were able to get our clothes on New York Undercover. Malik Yoba wore our clothes. A young Terrence Howard in the Bonnie and Clyde episode on New York Undercover wore our clothes.
Wow.
So it's fantastic. We were in probably 100 stores internationally, and that business taught me a lot. But then it was so hard, retail, fashion, clothing. Uh, I said, I probably should spend some time on a business that I was trained for. Yeah, I wasn't
Mm.
trained, so it just kind of came to me. I didn't have any training in the retail fashion business or clothing or what have you. So I said, I really need to go back to construction management as a business. That was my undergraduate degree. That was my foundation. I had been working for over 20 years, and I decided to start my firm in 2002, a firm called Noble Strategy, which I'm still working in today.
Mhm.
And at our height, we had probably 35 full-time equivalents. That was probably around 2014, 15, 16. Since the pandemic, our business has shifted, but we're still on very viable projects right now, working on a very instrumental infrastructure project in the city of Newark. And I've hired at least a handful of Hampton University graduates,
Wonderful.
one of which I'm currently working with right now on this
All
project.
right.
20 years, 24 years into my entrepreneurship journey. Let me back up. Fraternity relationships. So I had a friend, I had one of my frat brothers, a younger brother, who was in film school. And as
Mm.
an entrepreneur, you feel obligated to seed people, especially if you've had any level of success. So he said, I'm in film school and I need some money to finish my student film. So I sent him some money. Maybe it was $1,000. But, getting someone to write a check for you for
Mm.
$1,000 is not easy. It was not a loan. It was not, "When am I gonna get it back?" I'm not getting it back,
Right.
right? But I was able to do it, and I did it. So, he graduates, he submits to the American Black Film Festival, ABFF, biggest industry film festival, and he says, "I've been selected for the Emerging Directors Showcase. It's in Miami. Why don't you come hang with us and see your name in the credits?"
All right.
And I was like, "That's cool. Absolutely, I will." So I went to Miami, hung out at the ABFF Black Film Festival, and it was just a very exciting industry. It's Hollywood, but it was very exciting. The pace, I met a lot of people, some cool projects. And that was really my spark.
Mm.
Then I was talking to a second frat brother. Now, these guys, both of them, one played in 2006 and one played, I think, in 2004. I pledged in 1987. right?
Mhm.
These guys are like almost 20 years my junior, but they got knowledge and you have to listen. So at the time, I had published my first book in 2012 called Making Bold Moves, Creating Multimillion Dollar Success in 500 Days or Less. And it was a story about how I quit my job in 2005 and pushed my business to $2.2 million in sales just 18 months later, right? Making bold moves. And I'm talking to this younger frat brother about, yeah, I'm getting ready to write another book. And you know what he says to me? Bro, people don't read books.
Mm.
They need their information quicker than that. Got to put it on the screen. Just like that. And I'm like, I really didn't want to discount what he said. Of course, people still read books. He was like, people don't read books. He was like, if you really want to tell your story, and it's storytelling, you need to get into film. And he at the time was seeking to get into film school also.
Mm.
I said, I got to listen to these guys. So, brother named Byron Hurt made a film called Soul Food Junkies that really sparked me. And it was about Black community's love for soul food, right?
Mm.
But tucked inside of that story was his love for his father who died of heart disease
Mm.
because of his diet. So I guess if you made a film about here's why you shouldn't eat these foods because they're bad for you and they're going to cause heart disease and you're going to die, people might not be interested. So what he
Yes.
did is he inserted that story into a story about our love for bad food called Soul
Mm.
Food Junkies because we're addicted. We know what it does. We know how damaging it can be, but we're addicted. And his father
Mm.
died. So he told that story, and I said, I like the way he told that story. So I said, I want to tell a story about homecoming.
Mm.
This is right around the time Hampton started charging for the tailgate. I don't know if you remember what year that was. But, people come back for homecoming and the football game is not always the top priority, right? It's all the other stuff that's happening. And because Hampton felt, we're missing an opportunity, now we're going to charge you to fry that turkey or to eat that whiting, right? We're going to charge you to get in the tailgate. And people were so upset. Now, Hampton homecoming is a place where you get a lot of benefit. I can remember living in Jersey. One year, Rutgers played Norfolk State and we went to the football game to support another one of my frat brother, Latrell Scott, who was the coach of Norfolk State at the time. And I can remember parking on somebody's lawn and having to walk probably 20 minutes to that
Mm.
game. And I still had to pay $45. So here we are in Hampton, you parking right across the street from the stadium, right across the field, and people complain because they want to take 20 or $25 for you to get in the tailgate because you're not buying a ticket. And people were furious. And I kept saying, but you got to see it a different way. At homecoming, we come back because we love to come back. But everyone gets our money except the school.
Mm.
We pay the hotels, we pay the airlines, we pay the rental car companies, we pay the ABC store,
Hmm.
we pay the restaurants, we pay the venues, we pay the retail shops, right? Everybody except Hampton. Now, part of that is because Hampton has taught us that we come back to graduation and that's where we give money.
Mm.
But it's a missed opportunity to have all of that stuff going on at homecoming and people not giving and complaining about a $25 charge to get in the tailgate. So, taking all of this stuff, the fact that people are not really giving the way they should. I said, let me tell that story. But if I come out and tell a story about how you should give to Hampton, you might not
Hmm.
be interested. But you will be interested in homecoming. So I said, let me tuck this story in to the homecoming story. And I started to investigate why people come back. And I had said that I had been out of school 32 years and I only missed two homecomings. I thought that was unique. I started talking to friends and they said the same thing. We don't miss it either. Why do we come back? What is it that makes us feel like we have to be there? So I delved into the story and I said, I want to tell this story. So I read a lot of business biographies. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just got to know that you got to go get some people smarter than you.
Mm.
So I had a couple of friends who were in film and I started asking questions. How much does it cost to rent a crew? What can you do per day? What should I be concerned about First thing they said is it's about $1,000 per minute of film.
Mm.
So if you want to tell a 20-minute story, you need about 20 grand. And I said, well, it's going to be a challenge. So I was in New Orleans, and I remember having two meetings. One was my chapter brother who had a film company, and the other was with the athletic director for Hampton, who's also my frat brother.
At the time, you mean Eugene Marshall?
Mhm. Absolutely,
Right.
he was very instrumental. And I gave him the idea, and I said, I kind of want to get access. I want to be able to talk to staff, some departments, because I had come to the conclusion that as big a deal as homecoming was for the football team, it was an even bigger deal for alumni, students, and staff. So how do I capture that perspective? I got to talk to people about what it means. And then after the first couple of iterations, I went to some other people. I took a couple of documentary film classes in New Jersey, and I can remember the instructor saying, well, this is great, but you haven't told a story. It was the sizzle of homecoming, but he was like, you need to tell why people come back. Like, I need to know what is it that makes them come back. So I went deeper, and this project took me almost 6 years to complete.
Oof.
Uh, and I started to say, well, I want to show you how the football team gets ready for homecoming, which is technical, running plays, getting in shape. But how alumni, students, and staff get ready is just as critical. Whether I had a friend who flies 14 hours from Tanzania, coming
Mm.
homecoming, that's preparation. Young ladies spend 12 hours getting their hair braided. That's dedication, right? So I said, let me tell the story about how people get ready. And initially, I wanted it to be game day, but of course, ESPN and ABC own the trademark on game day. So we pivoted to homecoming ready because when you get ready, you've heard people say he was not sharp, he was casket sharp, right?
Mm.
Well, he wasn't just ready, he was homecoming ready. Like
Mm.
the connotation that takes on. You was really fly, but homecoming ready. And that's what it's about. So it's about how people get ready, why they come back, and the story tucked in, which you get to by episode 6, is 6 episodes, they're about 25 minutes each, is if it means so much to you, and it does, we've already established that, why wouldn't you give? Why wouldn't you give? So by the time we get to episode 6, we're talking about the organizations that come back and present checks for $100,000 and $200,000, and the individuals who spend money, and we're trying to really, really press on the issue that if this is the institution you love, you should have more regard and care for it financially. And I use the black church. We all love the black church, but the minute they start charging to get in, we would be upset,
Mm.
right? Because we believe it's ours, and people believe homecoming experience is theirs, but
Mm.
nobody really wants to own it. So that's the genesis of Homecoming Ready. We're very excited about it. We sold it to Aspire TV in 2024, and it debuted as part of their Spirit Week during homecoming season, actually homecoming weekend. And they debuted it again this year, homecoming. I guess they're going to use it every year at homecoming. But we still have a story to tell. We want people to see it, and we're working to get it out in other ways.
Well, I absolutely enjoyed it. I will say this, I watched most of it in preparation for this particular conversation, and I was impressed with the cinematic detail, the level of individuals that you were able to get to participate. I was just every time I'm like, "Oh, I know that person," or "Wow, they got them too." So, and the episodic focus, each episode has a specific focus to it,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think helps to get folks engaged in what you're going to be talking about in that particular episode. So I thought it was very well done. And but I'm sitting here doing the math because I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like,
Mhm.
25 minutes an episode, $1,000 a minute.
Minute, right.
I'm like, whoo, you spent some money on this, brother.
And it was all independently financed. Some great Hamptonians donated. We were very creative. We spent less than $100,000 on the film, I'll tell you that. And we have over, I think, 210 minutes of content. Very pleased with it. It was my first time as a quote unquote filmmaker, storyteller. So to get it finished, Because when you go around talking about it, everybody says, "Well, let us know when you finish," because they don't think you can finish.
Mm.
It's a huge undertaking. You're gonna run out of money, he's gonna run out of commitment and desire, he's not gonna finish. So the fact that we finished, we funded it, and we sold it successfully. And it's an award-winning film. We won 3 film festivals, and we
Wow.
were selected in, I think, 12 other film festivals. So it was a great education, a great experience, and just planted the seed for me to do more. I have 2 other stories I wanna tell. One is about black baseball that involves Hampton also.
Hmm.
Probably remember the last time we had a baseball team was 1971, and we won the championship of the CIAA. But why don't black people play baseball?
Hmm.
You know? And we're coming from a time when, Negro League baseball in the 30s and the 40s, that was the highlight of the community. Not only did we go to game, pack at 40,000, but we dressed.
Hmm.
Suits, ties, hats for the gentlemen, ladies with their best. And we lost all of that. We lost all of that. So as much as we can revel in Negro League lore at this point, we lost a big part of the culture when that went away.
Sounds like a worthwhile story for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to point out that you have been using your platform in some very interesting ways, right, to help promote the university and HBCU opportunities and so forth and so on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, once again, this sense of obligation will cause you to move in certain directions. So, I was the president of the North Jersey chapter, Hampton alum, for 6 years. And every time I would talk to a parent, they say, when I say, where's your kid going to school? They say, whoever gives us the most money. And I just cringe because that may not be the best place for your child.
Mm.
But so many kids have to do that because of the math.
Hmm.
So I said, well, let me see if I can create an organization. And I resisted this for a long time because I'm saying there's so many nonprofits that exist. Why don't you just go find a venture that you can work with and partner with them? Like, you don't need to start a new one. But I was led to do this after the Michael B. Jordan HBCU Basketball Classic in Newark, New Jersey, a couple years ago.
Right.
Hampton played Howard, North Carolina A&T played North Carolina Central. And I went out because I was chapter president looking for ways to make money stick in our community. Same way when the Super Bowl comes to a town, there's an economic benefit.
Mhm.
So I thought, bringing these HBCUs to Newark, there should be some money that stays. And I went out trying to solicit money. And we actually got interest. And the first thing they said to me is, well, this is fantastic, but if we give you money, it can't just be for Hampton. Like if there are 4 teams playing, it has to be for all 4, which caused me to go talk to Howard, A&T, and North Carolina Central. And that's really the germ of the idea that was created for HBCU Greatness, my nonprofit.
Mhm.
I felt like maybe we can create more impact if we talking to everyone and alumni councils as well as students. Let's make an impact. That's the bottom line. So I created a nonprofit, HBCU Greatness, focused on highlighting the kids who want to go to these schools. We create training, opportunities, mentoring, and we teach them about philanthropy. Right. So I go out and I recruit corporate mentors, and we have signing day, which is always the first Saturday in June, this Saturday in East Orange, New Jersey. And we celebrate those kids. And it was modeled after the NCAA, coming back to a football reference, NCAA letter of intent, right? During the pandemic, I saw all of these press conferences where kids trying to, all the mystery around where they're going to play ball and 4 hats on the table and you
Mhm.
know, and I said, "That's cool. What if we could do that for kids who will go into HBC? Create the same hype, the same exposure, the same press." And that's what we do. So we bring any kid, they register for free if they're a rising freshman. They come and they get information. They speak to current students who are in our program, tell them about the do's and don'ts. Parents get information about what to think when your kid goes down south. This is not New Jersey. Your kid's going to Georgia or Florida or North Carolina. You're going to have to be governed a little bit differently. We partner with the Garden State Bar Association, it's all the black lawyers in New Jersey, and they do that session. And then we have the students actually sign a pledge of greatness.
Mm.
And the program begins when they get to their schools in the fall. We mentor them over Zoom. 5 sessions usually in the fall and 5 in the spring, and there are a couple of volunteer opportunities we require them to do, and every student that does what they're supposed to do and maintains at least 6 attendance records out of 10, and the volunteer opportunity will get $1,000 a year until they graduate.
Uh, That is outstanding.
So on Saturday, we're giving out $20,000, and that's not a drop in the bucket.
Not at
And this
all.
is our 4th year cumulative. We will have given out 80,000, and we're just very excited about the work we do. So, Homecoming Ready actually serves as an extension because we license that for the use of HBCU Greatness nonprofit. So we will go to corporate events, we will go to schools. We've shown this film at college campuses, corporations. We did it at Yahoo, and we would charge them a fee that we use to support the nonprofit HBCU Greatness. And we get to tell the story. So when we're sitting in front of the high schoolers, while this story takes place at Hampton, I'm certain that any HBCU that you went to, you would see yourself in that film.
Mm.
Just takes place at Hampton, but it could be Bowie State, it could be A&T, it could be Clark, it could be FAMU, Bethune-Cookman. They have the same experiences. And we get to program these students with awareness for HBCUs because they're not getting it in guidance. So if they don't have a foundation, here's the foundation. Now you've seen a film, maybe you sparked your interest, you saw some images on screen that are appealing when you were in the 10th grade, 11th grade, and that sparks your interest. So when you go in that guidance counselor's office, you can say, I want to go to a historically black college and university, and here are the 4 or 6 that I've zeroed in on, and here's the reason why. And that's gonna cause us to reduce the wealth gap and the achievement gap, and that's why we do it. So I could talk to you about this stuff all day, man. Very excited and passionate about it.
Well, I think that's absolutely outstanding that you're finding ways to spread that message because ultimately it can get lost the further you get away from the epicenter, right? So the
Absolutely.
further you get up, and I'm in Connecticut, the further you get up this way, a lot of what is known, if you don't have a family member who attended, is like what you've seen on TikTok,
Yeah.
which is a very skewed view of what an HBCU experience is really like.
Yeah.
And, all as you said, the preparation that goes into it, but it's the love and the joy and the encouragement.
Mhm.
As someone in your video mentioned the idea of getting refilled for going
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to
It's a
the
fill
outs
up,
to the
he
world,
said.
right?
One of my classmates, 1989, he said it's a fill up of
That's it.
love, of hugs.
That is
Absolutely. And a lot of times that's why we feel the need to go, right? We battle in this world every day. To be able to take 72 hours, and for some people 84, it's increasing because we're extending that time. But for just 3 days to get normalized and
mm,
recharged is necessary, man. It's critical. And that's why people go through the lengths they do because it means so much. Part of the story, reason why people come back is because you're coming back to a place where you formulated all these relationships and where you grew, you matured, right? You were 18 years old, 18, 19, 17, and you created these bonds, you got all this new knowledge, all this awareness, and then you graduated, right? That period of growth doesn't go away. So I can understand, and telling the story, I certainly am familiar with it, but why people feel the need to come back. So I'm excited that I'm still coming back. And, I've been bringing my kids to homecoming since they were in the stroller. I got pictures of
mm,
my son at homecoming in the stroller, and he graduated from Hampton in 2020. So I was
yeah.
very pleased with that. And my daughter, you may have seen in the episode 6, I told her if she got a scholarship, I would buy her a car. She got a scholarship to Hampton, but she did not want to go. She wanted to go to Howard.
Ha, that's
So no car for her. It's a true story, and I'm grateful that she has the confidence to say no to me, her
mm,
mom who graduated in '91, her
and
brother
her
who graduated
brother.
in 2020, and I always tell her it's the best second place you can get. Like, you should feel good about how it's the best second place, if you had to have second place, Howard, you can't be first place like Hampton, but it's the best second place on earth.
Speaking of your son, isn't that him in the video also?
Yes, on the sailing team.
On the sailing team?
Yeah.
I thought that was outstanding.
And that's another
Mm,
reason I wanted to tell that story because Unfortunately, every year he missed homecoming because they had one of the biggest regattas of the year in Maryland.
Mm.
So, not many people are leaving homecoming, but he was leaving to go to Annapolis, Maryland to sail, and, he did that until his senior year. His senior year, he said, "I'm gonna enjoy homecoming," and I don't know what that did for his position on the team, but he still made it out in good measure, so
Well, brother, I am excited to have had the opportunity to hear your story and to broadcast it a little further, the motivations for why we do what we do. Because as you know, we just do.
yeah.
And people may or may not understand why it matters to us.
Mhm.
And so it's great to get the opportunity to have you just tell a little bit of what has happened, why it was good to you, and why you have chosen to give back through this lens.
Yeah,
And this lens begins with the connection to the football program, but it goes far beyond that. And having been a part of that and a part of that at Hampton is part of your story. So thank you for
that's right.
sharing your story in a very real way today. And whether it be through your nonprofit, through the businesses and the entrepreneurship that you have shared, and through the young people whom you have encouraged to consider not only Hampton but an HBCU experience,
Mhm.
it seems that you are continuing to have, or as we would say as Hamptonians, continuing to let your life do the singing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm
Um,
so grateful for that.
so that I am very thankful for, grateful for. Any last words you want to say?
I just want to say I appreciate you on this platform and giving me the opportunity to talk about my book, Making Bold Moves, Creating Multimillion Dollar Success in 500 Days or Less. That's by William S. Parrish. The Homecoming Ready film, you might see my stage name, F. William Samuel,
Mm.
because I spent 8 years doing stand-up comedy under that name, and the F stands for funny. William Samuel Parrish, William Samuel, right? F. William Samuel. So it's me. It's me. And look forward to the Homecoming Ready film being more readily available. We're experimenting right now with some digitization and monetization on YouTube. We currently have a site. It's called homecomingready.com
Mhm.
for information on the film. And let me just tell you, there were a number of Hamptonians who worked on this film that I was fortunate enough to get. My main cinematography was done by another one of my chapter brothers, Franklin Fitzgerald, who shoots for NASA. He films rocket launches and stuff like that, and he has a video business, and I was able to seed him. And then a brother who teaches film at Prairie View, Tony Clomax, who also played football, who did colorization and editing. He was the editing consultant on the film. And you know how I put that all together? Hamptonians again. At the American Black Film Festival in Miami, I run into another Hamptonian who sold the project to Netflix on the Rucker basketball tournament in
Oh.
Harlem. I think it's called Rucker 50, 50th anniversary. And every time I got a chance to ask him, I would just ask him questions. I would call him, Darryl Neverson. I think he got tired of me asking him questions because I would always ask him about the process. How'd you do this? Who'd you use for legal, etc. And I'm a smart guy, right? I realized that at some point this guy's gonna stop answering my questions. So I said I need to make him an executive producer, and that's what I did. I said, "Come in on this with me, man, and help me produce this film." And he continued to answer questions, and he connected me with Tony Clomax at ABFF, who was down there because he had projects he had been working on. He's already also been in the Emerging Directors Film Showcase at ABFF. So it was just great synergy for Hamptonians all the way around. And even a graduating student who was in the film, Tamia Witsy from Texas, participated and assisted us. I didn't even know there was a film major at Hampton, but it's tucked away in the English department. And I
Mhm.
met her at ABFF again. She was a
Wow.
volunteer at the film festival, and we started talking. "Oh, I go to Hampton. What's your major? Film? What?" Started talking, and I said, "I'm working on a project, and I think you can help if you're interested." So I'm grateful that I was able to impact and include so many Hamptonians because I thought for me to tell this story, people need to be familiar with what we have at our home by the sea.
Absolutely. And thank you for all that you are doing. This has been a outstanding opportunity to talk with one of our Hampton legends, Mr. William Paris Jr. And my name is TJ Jones, your Hampton football enthusiast, and this has been Pirate Players Then and Now podcast. Take care.